Okay.
Thanks, Jennifer. Well, I was about to say good afternoon, but I think it is a couple of minutes just afternoon to all of you. So thank you so much for joining, and thanks to Jennifer for having me here today. I appreciate that you might be from different schools, but fear not, I'm speaking about one in particular today, which is the university that I work at, which is Queen Mary University of London. Of course, this feels quite formal because I'm presenting. The session is being recorded for other students who can't be here today. But please do feel free to write any questions in the chat function. I might not be able to see them or respond throughout, but at the end there'll be plenty of time for questions. And if you don't feel confident enough today to actually speak or put your video on, you're more than welcome to just use that chat function, and we will be able to speak a little bit to your questions later on. In the meantime, just so you're not really bored of my voice and my image, I thought I'd just share my screen. As I mentioned, there's just some general information about the university I work at that you might be interested in studying abroad at. But hopefully, whatever I advise you on today will prove useful with your research for other universities. I appreciate that there are lots of different study abroad programs for you to choose from, to consider, to research. And although that's exciting, it's also somewhat overwhelming. So I'm hoping that, although I want you to come to Queen Mary, of course, I hope that this will give you a bit of insight into the UK higher education system in general and what might work for you, what might not. Something that I tell you about Queen Mary might be somebody's dream and somebody else's nightmare. I completely understand that it's different for everybody. So initially, I think it's useful for me to provide you with a brief introduction. Now, of course, I won't delve into this in great detail because a lot of this information is available on our web pages by a simple Google. And ultimately, I hope to give you a little bit more personalized insight today and to be used as a resource for somebody who works on campus. Today, I am working from home just so that I have a really nice quiet space because I usually work in a big open plan office. So today it's more of a case of any questions from you, I'm more than happy to answer. But brief stats, you'll hear this phrase quite a lot when you're looking at UK institutions. We are part of the quite famous in the UK, at least prestigious Russell Group partnership. So the Russell Group universities are made up of 24 different universities in the UK. Now, it's not directly comparable because our systems are different, but essentially think of the US Ivy League. So think of your top universities in the country, and that's going to be Queen Mary in the Russell Group for the UK. So of those 24 members, we are actually, I believe the last ranking, we were ranked 12th, but it's really good for you to consider if you're looking to study abroad in the UK and you're concerned about academic rigor, the research that goes into the classes you're being taught, or perhaps just what it might look like on your CV in the future, particularly within a UK setting, then Russell Group is probably what you're looking for. And actually what sets us apart is that we're the only Russell Group campus university in London. Now, I have been lucky enough to visit the Wellesley campus, and it's beautiful and it's contained and it feels like a real community. Now, of course, I need to remember I might not be speaking to all Wellesley students, but I know that campus culture in the States is something very special. That school spirit, the idea of being on an enclosed campus is something that is prevalent across the UK, but not so much in London. So London is such a huge city that essentially a lot of its universities are sprawling across the entire city, with students commuting anywhere between 20 minutes to over an hour to get to class every day. The beauty of Queen Mary is that we have our own compact campus. So not that I advocate for it, but you can essentially roll out of bed, put some clothes on, brush your teeth and get to class within 5 minutes. I will talk a little bit more about housing later on. But in short, we are a relatively large university made up of 28,000 students. Not all of them will be on campus at the same time, so you can move around quite easily. Around half of our student body is international, so you won't be alone when you come to campus. You won't feel as though you're sticking out of the crowd as such. And of those students, we also have around 1,000 study abroad students each year come to study with us, and that's roughly about 500 from September who stay for either the semester or the full year. And then we have another 500 join us, 400 to 500 join us in the January time. So in terms of our actual location, maybe I could get a hands up of who has been to London before. I'm not sure how many of you I'll be able to see. I'll just go across. Okay, so I can see one person definitely. I'll put my hand up like this because I live here. 2, okay, a couple of people, fantastic. It's just good for me to get a bit of a gauge of how patronizing I am being. But I will start just quite generically because most people didn't raise their hand. So I'm not here to give you, a big history lesson on the setting of London, but I think all of you will know it is very, very large as the city goes. Even though our small island is much, much smaller than the country that you guys are all living in right now, London is by far our only massive city. We do have a lot of cities in our small country, none of them compare to that of London. So when you think of large cities in the States, yes, you may think of Boston, and then not too far away from that, you have New York. You also have DC, you also have Philadelphia, and this is all within relatively close proximity. It's not so much like that in the UK. We're made up of what I would call a lot of small cities and very large towns, but London really is a metropolis. So if you have ever heard of people talk about zones, we do think of London in terms of zones. So any Londoner will refer to zones 1 to 9. This is the zones of the underground system, so the tube in London that everybody uses to get around. Of course, you can walk, you can taxi, you can bus, you can drive if you're mad. But most people will take the underground because it gets you from A to B really easily and very quickly, and it's quite cheap. What I would say is, when you're thinking of London, you're probably thinking of Zone 1. So anybody who's thinking of Trafalgar Square or any of these images here, so the Shard, the Gherkin, any other oddly named pieces of architecture, you're likely thinking of Zone 1. That's where Liz lives, our queen. If she's in Buckingham Palace, that's Zone 1. Now, in terms of our location, we are located in Zone 2. So we are in the first tube station east of the city centre. So we're along this main road here called Mile End Road. And if you look down here, you can see the city. So you can see the city centre as such from campus. You can walk into Zone 1. You can take the bus. You can take the tube, the taxi into Zone 1 should you wish. But you are living in the comfort of a 24/7 security campus. You are along the beautiful Regent's Canal, where we take students canoe kayaking. You're next to Victoria Park, where a lot of our sports societies actually practice. And there's lots of independent pubs and bars, clubs, cafes, pop-ups in that area. And you're next to a lot of what people would call up and coming, but I think they've already got up and they've came locations. So lots of neighbourhoods, the likes of London Fields, Hackney, Shoreditch, these are really quite gentrified areas. So you would be next to potentially an international food market store that's been there for decades, well before any of us on the call have been born. And next door, there will be a really hip, cool, massively gentrified coffee shop, charging you a little bit too much money for a flat white with beautiful latte art on it. So that's the kind of makeup of East London. It's really quite something different. And I've lived in East London for 10 years, so there's clearly something in it for me. I absolutely love it. So any questions about the location, of course, feel free to ask later on. I could talk about the location and London itself for a long time, but I should mention the study, part of the study abroad programme. So this is something for you to consider when you're researching any of your study abroad options. Are you permitted to study across the schools, across the academic departments? The reason why I am stating this or asking you to consider that is because some universities will only allow you to apply to a certain route. And that's because in the UK, students study one academic field, and that is it. So if they're a computer science student, they study solid computer science for 3 years, that's it. A liberal arts education is not so commonplace in the UK. We decide our academic trajectory and we stick to that, and we don't really look at classes outside of the academic school. The beauty of our programme is that you apply to study abroad with us and you can cross-register. So you can take classes across all of our academic schools if you're eligible to do that. So if you are meeting prerequisites. But of course, if you're interested in concentrating in something, so for example, if you are studying a form of English and drama, then our School of English and Drama have thematic programs. So bespoke suites of modules. Modules are what we call classes or courses here in the UK. They have these bespoke suites of modules for you to potentially take on board, where you are guaranteed entry onto those classes that have a very specific focus. And it could be on Shakespeare and the Globe, and then you would do a lot of your classes at the Globe Theatre, for example. That's just one example. And depending on your home university's permissions, we do also have an internship option. So you take 3 classes at Queen Mary, and then you would take an internship, which we permit for credit, but if that credit transfers back, would be a discussion to have with your school. That 4th and final module as such would be an internship that would be sourced by our colleagues at Arcadia University, funnily enough, but it would be at their London Study Centre. So we have a close relationship with them so that they can source you an internship whilst here in London. I won't speak too much about this in detail, but essentially we have around 1,000 modules, so just over 950 modules for you to choose from. You select your modules before you arrive on campus, and you're fully integrated. So you're in classes with Queen Mary students, with students for whom a degree at Queen Mary is going to be the case in 1, 2, or 3 years' time. I would like to highlight the fact that although we're here to support you throughout the whole of the journey, I'm sad to say that we're not experts in every academic field. So if you're an engineering major, or perhaps looking at politics and international relations, if you have specific academic questions, then you may wish to discuss these with one of our study abroad coordinators. So we have an academic member of staff available in each of our academic schools who can advise you on any academic specific queries. And they're really friendly. So please do approach them if you do choose to come to study abroad at Queen Mary. So looking at studies, again, we can talk about this at a later date if you choose to come to study abroad at Queen Mary, but this is commonplace across the board. So it's common if you are studying at any institution in the UK. So it's something to be aware of. As I mentioned earlier on, liberal arts is not commonplace in the UK. So you will find yourself in a class where a student is studying potentially pure history, and you might just be taking one history class to meet some general credit requirements or an elective. It might be a minor component of your degree, but that's not something to be overwhelmed by. It's just a different setup, and hopefully you can help each other in the classroom. Now, in terms of class structure, as I said already, we refer to classes as modules. And most UK modules come in 2 parts. So a lecture would very much be me as the professor, for example, speaking at you. So it might be an online lecture or an in-person lecture where there's anywhere from 40 to 400 students in that lecture. And then the seminar will be a much smaller unit. So it will be much more bespoke and personalized to you. It will be an academic member of staff speaking with you all about the content that was perhaps viewed and discussed en masse at the lecture. And the seminar could have anywhere between 15 and 20, maybe 22 students. So it's a bit smaller. We look at much more peer-to-peer discussion and analysis of the content you've received in the lecture. There's a huge focus on independent study in the UK. You might get your timetable of modules, so your schedule of classes, and see it looks much lighter. You might have 8 hours of contact time, but independent study is required. So what we would always say is keeping on top of your reading is a really good idea. If you've only got a few hours of in-person contact time, then what's expected is for you to almost create a bit of a schedule for yourself, like that of us who are at work. So maybe you could say, okay, well, between 10 and 4 p.m. every day, even if I don't have classes at that time, I'll be in my room or at a cafe or in the library studying, doing my reading, doing some homework as such, just so you can keep on top of that reading. And exams and grading are slightly different as well. So things like class participation does not count towards marks or your final bit of credit. all of your assignments are anonymously marked. And if they're worth a grade, then they'll be double marked anonymously. Your final module grade is usually based off of just one or two large assignments. So it could be 50%, 70% for an essay, 30% for an exam. So there's not a lot of quizzes or lots of elements of tests throughout your time. And this isn't specific just to Queen Mary. This is for everywhere in the UK. So if you're looking to study abroad at a higher education institution in the UK, these are just some things that you can consider. But looking at Queen Mary specifically, you're not obligated from our perspective anyway, again, something to check with your home school, but we do not, it's not mandatory for you to apply for on-campus housing at Queen Mary for us, but you do have that option. So you have the option to study abroad in one of the most exciting capital cities in the world. The chaos is within reach should you wish, but you can do that from the safety, security, the relative peace of a campus community setting. So much like your academic classes, our housing is fully immersive. You'll be living with a range of students, both study abroad and Queen Mary students, because we want to give you the option to make friends with locals as well as other study abroad students. Something worth noting for UK universities as well, the vast majority of them open campus housing only to their first year students. It's around this time, October, November, that first year students start to look for housing for their second year, where they'll live off campus and they'll look for a flat share with friends. So campus housing at Queen Mary is prioritised for first year students and study abroad students, because although you won't be in your first year academically, we appreciate the fact that looking for housing short term in a country that you're not familiar with is very challenging. So we prioritise you alongside our first years. In terms of the setup for housing, housing can be anywhere between 4 to 9 students per flat. So there'd be a flat setup. You'd walk in, there'd probably be a long corridor, and to your left or right, there'd be lots of doors. So if you're at flat 37 Fielden House, you go to flat 37, and you then might be A, B, C, D, or E, for example. And then you go into your room. You won't share your room. You'll have your own bedroom. Most of the time, you'll have your own bathroom. And then you'll have a shared living and kitchen space where students buy their groceries and cook dinner for each other together and just live in that communal area. Otherwise, everything you'd expect from on-campus housing with 24-hour security and all of the amenities you'd need. And we're located in between 2 tube stations that can get you to anywhere in London really quite easily. I just thought it would be a good opportunity for me to advise you about our wellbeing programme. So we offer a programme of wellbeing specifically for you as study abroad students. So we try to ensure that you are welcome to campus as a Queen Mary student, that you feel fully integrated and are treated as where possible as much in the same way as a Queen Mary student. But it would be really remiss of us to not be aware of the fact that you are a study abroad student and that your experience is going to be different to our degree seeking students who are with us for 3, 4, or sometimes 5 years. So we do offer a programme designed just for you. So we have running club, walking club, cinema club, amongst other things, but we also work with our colleagues at the University of Oxford's Mindfulness Centre, where we offer an 8-week programme of mindfulness. So it's basically a programme that can teach anyone who wants to participate some coping strategies, mechanisms to deal with stress and anxiety, which is just useful in general, but it is through the lens of being a study abroad student. So it might be the case of, how can I cope with stress and anxiety in everyday life? Plus the fact that I now live with a 9-hour difference from my home family based in this part of the world, or I'm having to deal with a completely different academic culture, or I've come here on my own and I need to make some friends yet again after just feeling settled at my home university. So that is just something for you to consider. And when you're looking at which programs might suit you, think about the office with whom you're communicating. So I work at the Global Opportunities Office at Queen Mary, which is essentially the study abroad office. And it's worth noting, whoever you're going to, are they personable? Are they approachable? Do you know the names of the staff members who are working in the team? Do they have a programme to take care of you, essentially? I think that's so important. And hopefully you won't need us in any way. And what often happens is come October, after September, or come February, after January, you stop coming to our events because you found your way, and that's wonderful. But if you haven't yet found your way, then you can continue to be part of our particular wellbeing programme and community. What I would say just generally is please do ensure you get involved with any student union, whichever university you choose to study abroad at. The best way to make friends with local students, to meet like-minded people, is by joining the student union, and joining one of the many societies available to you as a study abroad student. So if, for example, you were a physics student, then you might join one of the academic societies of physics and astronomy. You may wish to join a political group on campus that campaigns and does a lot of charity work, perhaps in the local community. You may wish to join a faith or religious group. You may wish to join what I'd call a silly but wonderful social society like Cheese and Wine Society or Harry Potter Society. This should hopefully be something there for everybody. And on top of that, we of course have our gym on campus, and we have various sports societies and clubs that you can get involved in, everything from beginners to actually competitive sports where you would compete against other sporting clubs across the UK. So for example, on Wednesday afternoons, there are no classes scheduled in any UK university because that's when all of the UK universities compete in their sports clubs. So finally, why Queen Mary? And then I'll stop speaking at you all and hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A. Our location, I think you've all heard of London. You're probably interested in going to London, but you have London with the safety of a campus and the safety of a community on campus. We're a small dedicated team here to take care of you. We've all had experiences of studying and or working overseas, and we want to take care of you and ensure that you have as good an experience, or at least opportunities to have those experiences in the way that we have had ourselves. We have a very active students' union, as I've just referred to, hundreds of clubs and societies for you to join and get involved in. And we do ensure that this programme is fully integrated because we want you to have the most authentic experience. So we don't want you to have a bubble experience where you have just a group of your home school friends. Of course, that's something you can achieve if you want, but ultimately it's our job to ensure that you're as integrated as possible. We have a really diverse student population, so half of our student body is international, which adds a really interesting flavour to all classes. So if you are, for example, in a politics class, then it's really interesting to hear the opinion on a particular policy, for example, from a student who may be from Malaysia, a student from the US, and somebody from Germany, with potentially a professor from South Africa, with fellow students from the UK or study abroad students, and students who might have just grown up, born and bred around the corner in the same zip code, who are walking to class every day from home. Our teaching style and our academics really are known to be quite friendly and approachable. Direct contact is encouraged, and there is a lot of interdisciplinary teaching and learning, so a lot of crossover between the academic schools, which I think really adds to the holistic experience that you'll have from your study abroad programme. So in short, a lot of reasons why you might wish to study abroad at Queen Mary. But of course, you might have some questions now or thereafter. So I'm just putting a couple of contacts here. My hair has grown a lot throughout various lockdowns, and I've decided not to go back just yet. So that is me, but just with much longer hair now. And I've also imported an image of my colleague Jen. And Jen is actually based in Atlanta, Georgia. So although not next door to you, she is in terms of time difference. So if you ever wanted to speak to anybody, whether it be over email or Zoom, you are always welcome to contact me. But if you do want to speak to somebody from within the US or somebody who has been raised within the US education system, then Jen is, of course, happy to speak with you. You're speaking just to me today, and I'm more than happy to speak to you from the perspective of somebody who is based on campus, who works here every day, who was not born in London, did not study in London, but has lived and worked here for just over a decade now. So that I can give you that perspective from on the ground, but Jen is based in the US, and you may well meet her sooner than you meet me at some point stateside. And so please do feel free to reach out to us with any questions that you might have about the programme or just about life in London more generally. I'm stopping the presentation now just so that I can say hello again to some of the people who joined a little bit later on. and to have a sip of water and to thank you all for sticking with me, because I've been speaking at you for quite some time now, so thank you.
Great. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat now or to raise your hand. Oh, here's a first question.
Okay, great question. Thanks. Hi, Michaela. So I'm just going to read it aloud as it was sent to everyone. I hope that's okay. So I plan to apply to Queen Mary for spring. That's very exciting and frighteningly not very far away. Our spots are spring limited. Okay, how long after submitting an application do students know they're accepted for studying abroad? Okay, so Michaela, just to let you know, our application period is open, but the deadline is looming. So not to frighten, but I was about to say not to frighten, but our deadline's Halloween. It's not spooky in any way. It's just a coincidence. Our application deadline for spring 2022, so for January 2022 entry, is the 31st of October. So that's 10 days away. Something to note is that if you wanted to apply for on-campus housing, you would then need to be in receipt of an offer. So you can't apply for housing before you've received an offer to study abroad with us. So spots for spring are not limited. However, good question, how long after submitting an application do students know? Depending on how many applications we have, our turnaround time is usually 3 to 4 working days, which is really quite fast for this particular field. However, funnily enough, a lot of students leave their applications till quite late. So we find ourselves in the last 10 days of the application period, and we're receiving tens of applications a day. So it is ramping up. So that 3 to 4 day turnaround is something that we try our best to meet. And in all honesty, when we say 3 to 4 day turnaround, earlier on in the application timeline, it's usually 1 or 2 days. So we are trying to stick to that 3 to 4 day turnaround. And we're aware of the fact that in order for you to apply for on-campus housing, you need to have been made an offer and you need to have accepted your offer to study with us in order to apply for housing, in order to filter through to the housing team system. So we want you to have essentially applied and been made an offer by, at the very latest, the 29th of October. So we're trying to work through applications as quickly as we can. And we will always make sure that if you've applied in good time before that application deadline for housing, which is also the 31st of October, then we'll try to get through them as quickly as we can to ensure you can apply for that. Now, spots are not limited, but housing spots are. So we can't guarantee that any student who applies for housing beyond that deadline is able to get housing on campus. So that's something to consider. So the sooner the better for applications, please. Let's have a little look. I'll stick with actually, if you don't mind, Adeline, I'm going to go to the next question from Hamsatu, because it's about applications again. So applying for fall 2022, the applications are not yet open. So we don't open for the next round until the current round is closed. So at the moment, our applications are open for spring 2022. That will close October 31st, and we will open our applications for September 2022 entry in January. So I'm sorry, you're going to have to be a little bit patient, but don't worry, you're in good time. And just make a note of my email, because if you're worried that you're missing something, they will open in January. But if you want to just email me in January, I can just say, okay, look, I think we're going to open on insert date. So we generally open the applications in January after the wonderful chaos that is Welcome Week for all the January 2022 starters. So once the dust is settled, once those hundreds of students are in place and taken care of and on classes, etc., we'll then turn our attentions to the September application cohort and open then. So a bit of patience needed, but we will open in January. Okay, hi Adeline or Adeline, I'm sorry, I don't know which way, but are there club sports teams, like a sports team that isn't too intense and mostly for fun? Yes, there definitely is, and that is way more up my street, to be honest. I did not do any competitive sports at university, but there are a lot of beginners levels classes. So it could be beginners to intermediate Pilates, or try your hand at basketball, or have you ever played football, as in not soccer? You're welcome to give it a go. So there are a lot of sports clubs like that for you to get involved in. And it's a really great way to meet not only like-minded study abroad students, but some Queen Mary students who are trying their hand at sports as well. We really encourage that, actually, just because it's great for your physical, but also your mental health. And it's just good to keep that in check. I think I need to do some more of that myself, I think. But yeah, lots of clubs that are not too intense are available for you. Okay, so I'm just going to look at this newest question. I'm going to be studying at Queen Mary for the spring term. Exciting. Not sure what to expect. Okay, that's normal. Can you go over the on-campus dining experience for individuals with allergies? Okay, I'll go question by question. So I'm not sure when you joined the call, but essentially, in terms of food and, let's say, meal plans are not commonplace in the UK. The UK university experience, I would say, is much more hands-off than what the US experience is. And I'm just saying it to be really frank, just so that I can manage your expectations. So even things like the fact that if you say a meal plan to a UK student, they won't know what that is. So what happens is UK students will move in and they'll live in their shared flat, which has shared kitchen facilities, and they'll go to the supermarket each week and buy their groceries, and then they'll cook their dinner, prepare their breakfast, make their packed lunch, or eat lunch at home. So that's what they'll do. So if, for example, what's useful for that is, if you have any sort of allergies, then you can take care of that yourself. If you had severe allergies, then you'd be able to contact, in this instance, because we're talking, just let me know in advance. And I would work with our housing team if you're living on campus, and we could look at, for example, getting a small refrigerator for your room if you wanted anything in particular kept separate from anybody else to avoid contamination, for example. But generally speaking, students who come to us with allergies, they've been able to take care of that quite easily, because they're not eating on campus via a meal plan. They're taking care of their own food on campus as Queen Mary degree seeking students would be. There are restaurants and cafes on campus. There's not a meal plan as such, but you can purchase a meal package if that's something that you were interested in. So that would be purchasing in advance, like a breakfast and hot meal per day if you wanted. It's a little more restrictive because you pay in advance, and then you don't want to waste that. And then if some students are all cooking together and you think, oh, I don't want to miss out, but I've already paid for this, it's a little difficult, but that is an option for you. How far are the laundry facilities from the dorms? I don't know in meters as such, but it's a very short walk. It's walking distance. So you often see, in the evening, sometimes in the morning, just students walking around with their laundry bags just between, sometimes, which always feels quite alienating to me. You'll see them in their pajamas. That's not so commonplace in the UK, seeing students in pajamas around campus, but they're within walking distance, so really, really close. And again, how soon after you submit a housing application do you know where you will be placed? So housing applications are open now. The deadline is the 31st of October, but unlike applying to our programme generally, they will not start making offers for housing until all of their applications are in by the 31st of October deadline. So housing offers will go out in November into early December. The reason being, they need to ensure they get all of those housing applications in, and then they need to work out how many of those applicants, for example, need special accommodations. Do they need ramp access? Is there a request for single sex rooms only? So they need to know what their applicant pool looks like in order to work out those special accommodations and then everybody else's applications. So you'll find out predominantly in November, sometimes into early December. Housing system. Okay, next question. Does the housing system mean that our flatmates would be first years or other study abroad students? Also, is it possible to study abroad for a full year? Great questions. The housing system means that you would be sharing with a mix of Queen Mary first year students and other study abroad students. So we would never put you in a flat without another study abroad student, because we want you to have that experience of being alongside somebody who's on the same program as you, essentially. First year students, I always tell you that just to let you know, because a lot of students go, oh, it's odd, it just so happens I'm only with first years. That's because second year and final year students in the UK are not allowed to live on campus. There's no space for them. So we prioritise first years and yourselves. So a first year could have taken a gap year or two. They could actually be 22. but they could also be 18 or 19 and relatively fresh out of school. Actual school, as in secondary school education. What I would say is a lot of our study abroad students like the fact that they're with at least one or two other study abroad students, and they're mixed with Queen Mary students, simply because even if they're first year, so they're a bit younger than you, they want to explore the city and they want to do a lot of things that maybe some of our second and final year students don't want to do quite as much because they've lived in the city for a minimum of 1 year already. So yeah, you will be mixed with first years and other study abroad students. And depending on your home university and your academic program, it's totally fine to study abroad. Like we are for a full year. We have lots of students who study with us from September through to the spring, summer of the next year. I personally think it's great if you can study abroad for the full year. A lot of our students who come for one semester, they find it goes very, very quickly, particularly in the fall. They often get to November, feel really settled and they're loving it and they're starting to prepare to return. But I appreciate that's not always possible for different reasons. The spring semester is longer. So you arrive in January, you leave towards the end of May or early June. So it's much longer. But yes, full year is possible from our perspective. And if I look at the other housing question, all the housing rooms are non-smoking. So nobody's allowed to smoke in their flat. They have to go outside this special like smoking allotted areas, but you're not permitted to smoke in your flats at all. Michaela, great question. How diverse is Queen Mary? Is there space for students of colour to be in a community with other students of colour? I shouldn't be so excited by this question, but I am, because we are known to be the most diverse student campus in the UK. And I'm also proud to say, in terms of diversity, it's not just diversity in terms of quotas. We have a very diverse student body, but I think we have a really inclusive campus as well, where students do feel comfortable to be part of that community. So maybe I can throw some stats at you, but I don't want to get them wrong. So I'm just going to have a little look quickly. I've got a little sheet, and I want to basically provide you with an introduction to what that means to have a diverse campus. So I've got my stats here. I just don't want to get them wrong, Michaela. So in terms of our student profile, and this is looking at our London campus and our undergraduate student body, so not the postgrad students, but the undergrads, who are you? 90% of our, well, actually more than 90% of our students come from state schools, so they're not privately educated. 75% of our student body come from Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds. So there's an acronym that you might find in the UK. There's much dispute as to whether it should be used or not, but a common acronym you will still find today in the UK is BAME, so BAME. And so whether we use this or not, 75% of our student body are from Black, Asian and or minority ethnic backgrounds. 51% of our students are first generation students, so the first in their family to enter a university education. As you know already, half of our student body is international, and over 30% of our students actually come from households with an income that is less than £15,000. Now I know that's pounds, not dollars, but that is something quite stark. It's quite unique, I think, for universities. It is particularly very unique for a Russell Group institution, so a top 24 university in the UK, to have stats like 75% of their students to be from Black, Asian and or minority ethnic backgrounds, and for that amount of students to come from households with what is known to be a low income. This is the type of university Queen Mary strives to be. We strive to be as inclusive as possible and to encourage any student, regardless of background, to enter campus, feel comfortable to do so, and to thrive in that learning environment. So I hope that's a useful insight, Michaela. I think to be frank, in answer to your question, is a space for students of colour to be in a community with other students of colour? Absolutely. I don't know if you will have, this sounds so arrogant, but I'm not sure if you will have visited a campus quite like Queen Mary when you come. It's quite an exciting campus to be part of. So if you choose Queen Mary, then that's what you'll see. But if not, maybe you can visit Queen Mary when you're at another school and see what you find when you come to campus. Sorry, everybody, I kind of just answered a lot of questions in a row, and I appreciate the fact that I haven't really come up for breath. I hope I'm just going to have a little look through the chat and make sure I didn't miss any questions. I don't think I have, but please do, wave erratically if you think I've missed a question, or if you think I haven't answered something sufficiently, or you want clarification on any of my answers. Obviously, more than happy to answer those questions. But I am also just so grateful that you're here. I appreciate that. Zoom fatigue is real. However, I love the fact that we can all be here and I can speak to you, because sadly, whether I want to be or not, I can't always be across the pond. So this is great.
Thanks so much, Jess. That was really helpful. I'm going to stop recording now, and I will send the recording, post the recording and send it to the partner schools.